name is Father Christians. I'm the chairperson of the Standing Committee on Public Accounts. Next to me is Mr. Dustin Davids. Members, over to you for introductions, and the AG and Audit Committee. And then before we get to there, we'll ask the members online also to introduce themselves. Over to you, member.
Good afternoon, Chair. I'm Leon van Wyk, a member of the Public Accounts Committee.
Good afternoon, Chair. Derek Bessels. I am an alternate member, but standing in for Member Johnson.
Nama French Mbombo. Good afternoon, member of the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, members online.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Chair.
I'm Benedicta van Minnen. I'm a permanent member of SCOPA.
Good afternoon, Chair, and everybody. The meeting present. My name is Pat Lecker. I'm a permanent member to the SCOPA committee.
Thank you. Over to the AG and the Audit Committee.
Good afternoon, everybody. Chair, Honorable Chair, and members. I'm President Whaley. I was the engagement manager on audit.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Faisal Jacobs. I'm a manager at the Auditor General.
Good afternoon, Honourable Chair. My name is Peter Strauss, and I am the chairperson of the Audit Committee.
Good afternoon, Honourable Chair and members. My name is Ashley Alcris, and I'm Deputy Business Executive responsible for the Western Cape Department of Infrastructure Audit.
Good afternoon, Chairperson and members and colleagues. My name is Tshepo Mohlomi. I'm from AG's office. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to hand over to the Auditor General. We start on page 4. We're not going to do the introductions and that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So page 4.
Hi, Chair. I'm Leon van Wyk, a member of the Public Accounts Committee.
Thank you very much, Chair. I am Member Derek Wessels, and I am alternate member standing in for Member Johnson.
Welcome back. Good afternoon again. I'm a French Mbombo.
Members online?
Hello, everyone. I'm Benedicta van Minnen. I am a permanent member of this committee. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Pat Lecker. I'm a member to the committee. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair and colleagues. I'm Basil Petrus.
Thank you very much. Minister HOD, over to you.
Thank you, Chairperson. Tisha Simmers, Provincial Minister of Infrastructure.
Good afternoon, Chantal Smith, Head of Department.
Good afternoon, Shafira Andrews, Acting CFO.
Good afternoon, Pauline van der Merwe, Acting DDG, Strategy Planning and Coordination.
Good afternoon, Bashir Rahim, Director of Financial Governance.
Good afternoon, Labika Skierman, DDG for Human Settlements.
Fran Denton, Director, Human Settlements.
Tom Smith, DI, Branch Human Settlements.
Afternoon, Mel Burtis, spokesperson to Minister Simmers.
Afternoon, Rushana Caesar, Financial Accounting.
Afternoon, Jamila Davids, Financial Accounting.
Good afternoon, Sonia Faro, reporting.
Good afternoon, Khadija Rinquis, Financial Accounting.
Afternoon, Renai Cook, Acting DDG, Provincial Public Works.
Good afternoon, Brett Blackburn, Chief Director, Movable Asset Management.
Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, members. Mujahid Solomons, Acting Director, Management Accounting.
Good afternoon, Louise Bays, Acting Chief Director, Road Contracts.
Good afternoon, Michael Hendrickse, Acting DDG, Transport Infrastructure.
Afternoon, members. Stefan Malan, Internal Audit.P.
Afternoon, Brimelda Bekes, .P, Internal Audit.
Good afternoon, members and Chairperson. Ashley Orcus from the Auditor General's Office.
Good afternoon, members, Honourable Chair Peter Strauss, Audit Committee.
Good afternoon, members and Chair. President Whaley, AGSA.
No, thank you very much for that introductions. Members, as we do it, it's 2 questions per member, and I take 3 members at a time. You work through the chairperson. We don't do dialogues. And if members do ask a question, you must give the page number so that the department can prepare and know what we're talking about. So if you ask the question, please give the page number. Otherwise, we're not going to entertain that question if we just talk. So everybody has read the report. I'm going to give over to the Minister HOD for opening remarks, and then we'll shoot right into it. Thank you.
Chairperson, I'll be very brief. What you see before you is our second annual report as a department. Obviously, we have traversed a number of complex challenges which we have overcome. We do acknowledge that more needs to be done, but given that we have received a clean bill of health again from the AGSA, it should tell you that our commitment continues as a department, but that as we maintain the clean governance focus, the focus now shifts to innovation, as innovation is now needed to bridge some of these challenges that we've identified in the year under review. Thank you.
Chair, I just want to thank the committee for affording us the opportunity to account. We welcome that opportunity, Chair, and we are now ready to engage.
Thank you very much, members. We're going to do governance, and governance is part C from page 151 to 184. We're going to deal it with governance now. So questions, members, is there any hands? If there's no hands, then I will just throw in my first question, and it's just on. Okay. It's just emerging the management of risks, and that is a part of governance. So if I want to refer to a page as 154, just The question, and this was the discussion with the Auditor General about, I said to them for a long, long time, and I'm looking at the programs, program 2, program 3, program 4, and that's of course from page 83 right through. But so I'm talking about managing risks, because speaking to the Auditor General, you still have poor contractor performance. Looking at program 2, you still have underperformance of contractors. I know many of us come a long time. We've always said, why don't we blacklist? Where do we get that from? Those type of discussions. So it's, I know you're a new department, but I mean, old hands, so it's just your risks when it comes to programs and managing those programs. There's a couple of other things that they, because you've underachieved in certain targets, indicated 2.6.1, that's page 91, page 90, poor contractor performance, page 116, human settlements, that is the underperformance. And I specifically ask the AG, because I see there's also severe weather conditions, but he says, no, it's two separate issues. Weather can affect, but there's definitely the underperformance of the contractor. So, members, is there a question from your side? Can we give over to the Minister, HOD? Minister, you can chip in when you want to, but I'm going to give to the HOD, and the HOD can direct. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. So if we're going to talk about contractor performance in general, then a couple of points to note. To start off with, just contextually, remember that the Construction Industry Development Board divides contractors according to their capacity and capability to manage and implement infrastructure projects. This is dealt with by the Register of Contractors, and it also assesses their past performance, in other words, their performance record, as it were. We as government are compelled to use contractors in accordance with this register, and therefore, if we put out any tender, we have to indicate what grade contractor are we talking about and what class of work are we talking about. When we do this, understand that the CIDB, through its processes, have already undertaken a measure of due diligence. And therefore, the department relies on this due diligence when it evaluates, through its own evaluation processes, capacity and capability. To add on to that, what we do is the department is to also ask in the tender process for projects that is similar or the same that you have handled before. You need to understand, Chair, that what we are trying to do is balance the principles of openness and fairness against the principles of your capacity and capability to do the work, and therefore manage risk in terms of performance. Unfortunately, there are things outside of our own control, as well as the control of the contractors. Recently, you would have learned that a company as big as Murray & Roberts, which holds a grade 9 CE class of works, which means it's a JSE listed company and has been in existence for over 100 years, suddenly had to close its doors. Why is that the case? And over the last 4 to 5 years, we've had a number of big contractors like Murray & Roberts that had to close its doors. Very often, this has to do not because their performance are poor, but because their cash flows are suddenly in trouble, because what they're doing is they're cross-subsidizing the projects that we pay for with the projects that they have from national departments that are not paying them for years. And so, Chair, if they then fail, we have to ask ourselves the question, did they do anything wrong? And each one of these contractors on the basis of poor performance or non-performance has to be evaluated on own merits. If it is something that is completely not under their control, we cannot be talking about blacklisting. And I want to draw the distinction between blacklisting and restriction. Blacklisting is a process attached to the procurement rules of the National Treasury that has to do with non-compliance and actually invoking the Combating Corrupt Activities Act. So there has to be a criminal element involved of which they were found guilty. If they are then blacklisted by the National Treasury, who is the only authority that can blacklist them in terms of that act, then no accounting officer may use them. What we can do is to restrict them. But you restrict them from a tender or type of tenders for a period of time on the merits of what it is that they did wrong. Chair, that system is not put in place so that we penalize businesses that has tried and failed. It has been put in place so that we say where contractors have, through their own negligence or intentionally not performed and walked away, that there's a measure of relief or some steps that the department can take against them. So from that point of view, I just want to say, yes, it so happens that under certain circumstances, you do get contractors that performs poorly. It depends on what is the content and what led to that poor performance. There's also an issue that national contractors tender for provincial work that they've never done before. We are not allowed to exclude them on that basis. But what we find is they don't have a rapport with the suppliers of building materials here. And so when they are in trouble, they can't go and make arrangements like other suppliers from the Western Cape would be able to do. So it really depends, Chair, on the content and the merits of the case. And we deal with that, and we have in our accounting officer system a process whereby if we restrict, we do it in terms of the audi alteram partem rules. In other words, we afford the contractor the opportunity to come make a case. And if they do, and we still find that there's reason, then they would be restricted and they would be listed on the National Register for Restricted Contractors. That answers the question.
Thank you very much. Member Pat Lecker, your hand is up.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, indeed, we have been told that there has been issues where there has been some areas of poor performance, and how it is going to be dealt with, or how it has been dealt with. But I want to urge the department in terms of its own processes of restriction. Can we get information as to the company A has been restricted? Do we have, or how much has been paid to a company for its poor performance? For instance, in cases where houses or human settlement contractors are being issued, does a company get to be paid for work that it has done? For instance, if issues are picked up from a top structure and not necessarily on its foundation phase, but rather a top structure, what then becomes a recourse for the company? Because whatever it is that has been picked up to have been poor would have been on a top structure rather, and not on the foundation phase. If there are such cases, how much have we lost as the department? Then the second question, Chair, is on
Member
page
Lecker, I want you
15.
to give the pages so that they can respond, because I don't know. I'm lost now. Where are you referring to on the on governance, Member Lecker?
I'm referring on poor performance strategies in terms of the risk management by the department.
Go ahead.
Remember, okay, thank you. Then, Chair, on page 157, under minimizing the conflict of interests, in an event where there has been instances where some of the officials have not declared their conflict of interest, has that been the case in the Western Cape, and what remedial steps have been taken in ensuring that such does not happen again? I would also want to check in terms of the provincial treasury instruction, still on page 57. Is there anything that gets to be attended to, especially when there are problems of funds that have been reduced? What then becomes the responsibility of the department when there are instructions that certain amount has been reduced or moved from one point to another? Then lastly, Chair, would be on the code of conduct in page 158. Has there been instances where there has been any negative sides effects in ensuring that the code of conduct has been adhered to, and what has been done about it? Thank you, Chair.
Over to you.
And that relates to money.
Yes, Member Mbombo, over to you. Yeah, your name, yeah, Member Mbombo.
Thank you very much. We can I just confirm, Chair, we are in governance, part C.
Governance part C, yes.
Yeah. So on page 153, on the risk, quoting the decay of the provincial immovable asset base to below the mandatory standards as part of the key risks. The department has mentioned that, and also the issue of the insufficient capital and maintenance budgets. Linking that to page 166, 83.5. If there's been any progress, because in 83.5, it's about when the committee asked for the 10-year maintenance backlog in the province, including the cost, the budget, and shortfall, as accordingly in terms of all of this. So when the department, as part of the immovable assets, has got this backlog and also is a risk factor for the maintenance of the capital, what is it now that they are doing, and taking note that they suppose, I think they did send the 10-year maintenance plan in regard to that. And then if you look in terms of what you have sold, because I was looking in terms of the department's progress on page 164, in the financial management, in regard to they've done quite a lot in terms of the receipts, despite they use 94.6% of the budget. But if you look in terms of the departmental sale of some of the assets, which is about 24 million. So that there's no money. And also you have got immovable assets that you are unable to maintain. And I also look in terms of what was budgeted for some of the assets. And with a 10-year plan of all of those, it is a fact, just like anywhere else in terms, especially with the old buildings. So where are you now in regard to all of this, more specifically in terms of your maintenance plan, the 10-year maintenance plan? I was trying to look at it, where it was submitted. I can't find it. And then the second question is on the last of this. It talks about the BE on page 183. Although I don't want to ask 183, although I don't want to ask about the BE compliance, it is a fact that the infrastructure spends on goods and services is a second after half. I think the third one is the education. The last time I checked, you spent out of the 19.7 billion for the whole of the goods and service that the Western government spends in the previous year. I think for you, it was about 5.3. Out of that, recently there was a statement coming from the Western Cape government and the PT on how they have managed to get at least 30% of the service providers to be women. So do you have information? And also up to that, they are writing to the UN and all of those for verification, which is a good thing. From me, who's a proponent of the gender equality and gender responsive budgeting and so forth, it is a good thing. So at what extent with that 5.3 billion for you now specifically, because with health, I already know without even looking at the books in terms of who are the service providers. So at what extent that you make an effort or there's an evidence of that 5.3 that went to women, and also for the overall Western Cape, the part of the report was that 57% was on the Black owned. So at what extent for this 5.3 billion went to the women and also went to the Black owned as according to this compliance? Thank you.
Thank you, Member Mbombo. HOD, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. So the first question from a member Lekker related to urging the department in terms of its own process and asking around companies that were paid for poor performance. So let me just say, we do progress payments. There's an inspection before an invoice is certified for payment. Where there has been poor performance, then we go back. That contractor needs to break down that thing if it hasn't been caught while they're building it, and they have to redo it. We don't pay for substandard products. If the house is handed over, there's a specific period for latent defects in terms of which that latent defects needs to be reported so that we can deal with it. If it's outside of that period, it makes it difficult because then it's outside of the construction guarantee process. So remember, we need to release the construction or the contract guarantee after a certain period of time. So it depends on at which particular point in time this thing is reported. But if it's reported in that period, Chair, then we fix it before any payment is made for a contractor. The second one is then officials not declaring conflicts of interest and remedial steps. I'm just going to ask Pauline to respond to that and the fact that, or what processes we put in place and how do we deal with that. I didn't catch the question around anything to be done when funds are reduced on that page because we were dealing with a conflict of interest page, Chair. And then the code of conduct and how do we ensure that people are firstly aware of it and how do we enforce it. I'm also going to ask Pauline to deal with that. To Member Mbombo, just to say, we can give you, there is a particular template in the annual report, which Pauline will refer you to, where we give you stats of the BEE. But in relation to your particular question of women-owned, we do have a breakdown. I'm just not sure if Pauline brought it with, but we can certainly provide it with the names of the company to the committee because we do keep that information. And just to say that we are reasonably successful in the development of women contractors and they participate in the tender process. So there's no need to do set aside so that they are particularly, targeted. They participate in the mainstream tender processes and they win the tenders fair and square. And they're actually very good at not only delivering infrastructure, but the other parts, the corporate social investment parts. In other words, doing a little bit more than what the tender is saying, because they also have that sense of community, of which we are very proud. So I'm going to just ask Chair for Pauline to respond.
Thank you. HOD. So what we're doing is, in terms of conflict of interest, we are comparing the CSD extract with a parcel extract to identify any state employees that's having businesses that's doing business with government. And then there's a process that we follow. It's usually employees that just started at government and had a previous company that was registered. So we are taking them through the process, and the DPSA guidelines is very clear. They either have to resign from government or from the business that they had. Then we also have the WCBD4, where all contractors that is doing business with government, they need to declare their interest. We look at the details of the company, the directors, the shareholders, the members, all of those. And they also have to declare if any of those are government employees. And also if any of the family members are employees of an organ of state. So on the WC CBD4 form, we also look at their past performance and whether they are tender defaulters or any of the directors have been prohibited from doing business due to corrupt activities or fraud. Then in terms of the other question, I just want to quickly go to it. Okay, so the question, have there been any instances where they didn't comply with the code of conduct? We didn't have any such instances yet. Then in terms of the question on the BBBE spend on page 172, we've got a table there that lists all the awards for the current financial year or for the 24-25 financial year, and it's broken down into the different BE levels of the companies that got the awards. Thank you.
If I can just add, so the women-owned companies, we have a list of those and we can certainly supply it in writing to the committee. Then just to say in terms of the code of conduct, the code of conduct is sent out to all employees regularly. There's specific targeted training in the department where we take everybody through the code of conduct so that they understand what is expected of them and what is the steps that the government can take should they not adhere to the code of conduct. Chair, ethics is something that is for us very intrinsically linked to the code of conduct, and therefore there's even ethics training apart from just the officials that we make available to the relevant audit committee members, that we make available to other departments to participate with us in the ethics training that we have. And we do have, Chair, a very good uptake from the department. We take it out into our rural areas as well, not just the CBD-based employees, because it is such a serious thing for us and because we need people to understand what type of conduct is not acceptable, what type of ethics is it that we expect from them, how does those link to the values of the province and the values of our department, Chair, and what happens if you do not adhere to it. So it's not just something that we send out once or you handed it once and then we forget about it. This is an annual thing. It's part of our annual training program, which we take very seriously. Chair.
Thank you very much. So we'll ask for that documentation, Member Mabombo. Yes.
It's a 8.3.5166, but I was linking it to the risk factor related to the assets maintenance. Good. Yeah.
Right. So just in terms of the risk of decaying of our asset base, we raise this as a risk because there's never enough money in the fiscus. The backlog in terms of maintenance for the entire infrastructure portfolio, whether you talk about human settlements, whether you talk about roads, or whether we talk about public works assets, has been growing and it has been increasing due to the lack of funding. In the human settlements domain, it is even more serious because in terms of the grant, there's no specific portion of the grant set aside or targeted towards maintenance. And now what we're sitting with is you sit with stock on hand that has never been transferred to the rightful owners from a title deed point of view, and therefore government is still responsible for it. For this reason, Chair, even like we've explained in the previous session, what the department aims to do is we use this and our asset management plans to give a technical indication of what is the technical needs budget. If all things were fair and equal, what is it that we would need in order for us to address the backlog as well as the current maintenance programs? Unfortunately, life happens like we've had with the floods and so on, and your backlog is suddenly exacerbated because now 60%, 70% of the road network has been impacted by the severe floods and others. For this reason, us finding alternative and blended finance and partnerships with the private sector becomes a key component in starting to address the backlog. The fiscal envelope as it stands can barely handle the new programs that we have or the new projects that we have to implement, and therefore we can't be splitting that between new and maintaining. At the moment, the budget is split and weighs heavily from a departmental point of view in terms of maintaining what we have as opposed to building new. We build new when it serves two purposes. One, it's a safety intervention. Two, it's an economic intervention with the aim of job creation and linking key critical economic routes to each other. So, Chair, that's part of the departmental strategy, but it is linked to finding new sources of funding. And I explained in the previous session that would include things such as borrowing. It would include things such as partnerships and others, donations, and so on and so forth. And that goes through a National Treasury Committee via the Provincial Treasury.
Thank you very much. HOD member Basil Petrus, I see your hand is up.
Thank you again, Chairperson. Page 173, Chairperson. I just want to know, can we have more information on the supply chain management complaints in relation to corruption, fraud, and tricking?
Judy, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm going to start and then I'll get Pauline to just give the types of investigations that we're doing. Just to say that from a National Treasury point of view, instruction point of view, as well as a Provincial Treasury instruction point of view, departments must have a mechanism that allows for complaints and queries and the resolution of complaints. This is also an alternative as to just having to go to court, which our contractors and the public cannot afford to. So we do have a complaints mechanism. The complaints are recorded, they are investigated, they are reported upon monthly to myself and the minister. We do go back to the public or whoever the contractor is that registered a complaint to give them the outcome of the investigation. And we do make sure, Chair, that it is from a departmental point of view, that the people investigated are not the people that's involved in the actual project. I will just hand over to Pauline to just give a snapshot of the nature of complaints that we've received and the fact that they were, of course, resolved within the same year. Thank you, Chair.
So like HOD has said, they have been resolved and all the complainants get a letter from the department. What we usually do is we call them in and we have a meeting with them to understand the entire complaint, because it usually comes in via email, and then we do the independent investigation. So the people that's doing the investigation is not part of the process, they're not part of the contract, they're not managing the project. So we've split it into two categories. The one is contractual and the other one is the abuse of the supply chain system. So usually on the abuse of the supply chain system, it's people that's asking why didn't they get the tender, and sometimes it's that either they don't understand the process, they didn't make the functionality criteria, and we take them through that so that they can understand and better their processes as well. On the contractual side, it's usually inquiries about payments that's not been made. It's subcontractors that complaints that the main contractor doesn't pay them. So it's those sort of things. But I can give a detailed breakdown of each one, but that's more or less what it is.
Thank you very much. Is there no further questions on governance? I see no hands. Did you raise your hand? No, you didn't raise your hand. Okay, let's move over to the PFMA compliance report 216 to 226. Members, over to you. Member Van Wyk.
Thanks, Chair. On page 216, I noticed the irregular expenditure. I think there was a closing balance of 51.27 million, which I assume is still a matter that hasn't been resolved one way or another. I don't know if there are any perhaps further comments there just to indicate to us the process that is being followed there. Thank you.
Any the same page 216 is this B that irregular expenditure under determination. Just elaborate on that. Members, any other questions on governance? And then there's a 220 damages and losses to road construction and maintenance. If I can just get something on that, and then also I've got more questions, but there's no other questions. Then I can just ask all my questions, and then invoices paid after 30 days is 228. And then what page is that? That is page 221. And then just if we look at 223 and 224, it seems that there's an overlap with the hiring of chemical pollution facilities. There's Welgemeen NG Church, and at the bottom is I'm just checking here now. No, the appointment of a service provider, that's a 1, 2, 3, and then there's again appointment of service provider. It seems like an overlapping there, and there's an overlapping with the primary school, or is it the NG primary school that is on page 223, and then on page 224, it's also here hiring for pollution facilities. You look at the periods, it's almost like a duplication. Do you have it? I'm too fast. Do you have that? If you look at 223, the 1-2 is a hiring of chemical pollution facilities, so you have it there. And then if you go to the next page, it's almost the same period. It's if I look at the periods, that the periods is, I mustn't get confused on the period. Appointment of the service providers 1st June to the 30th of September, and then if you look at it, 1st August to the 31st of, or do I have it? But I've made a note here: overlapping dates, duplication. Just tell me if there's a duplication, and then the hiring of pollution facilities. You got it on the one page 223, and then you have it again 224. You got it now. Eh? Members, no other questions? Is that fine? So that is over to you, HOD.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to ask Bashir to deal with the irregular expenditure questions, both as well as the damages and losses question. Shafida to deal with the invoices paid after 30 days, and Pauline dealing with the last question on the pollution facilities. Thank you, Chair. In that order, Bashir.
Thank you, HOD. Through you, Chair. The first question was about the closing balance of the regular expenditure on page 216. That's 51.2 million rand, which we've carried forward into the new financial year. That relates to an old PFS case that comes from the former DTPW that was finalized after the DOI was formed. That case was assessed during the year, and it was sent to Provincial Treasury for condonation. We have not received any written feedback from them as yet, but it essentially relates to the use of the appropriate supply chain mechanism at the time in relation to that particular contract. And then the second question was about the 1.14 million rand. That is a regular expenditure that's under assessment. Basically came about towards the end of the financial year when it was raised, and it relates to the extension of or payments after a contract had ended. Then, so it's still under assessment. Page 220, the damages, the 1.2 million rand. Those basically 85 cases of accidents and stuff, and those relate to the yellow fleet, the PA vehicles which is used by the district municipalities. So the average would possibly be about 15,000 rand for per damage. In the instances where it cannot be pegged at any particular person or organization, it gets written off after a very long legal process has been exhausted.
Thank you, Shafida.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. For this year under review, we had a total number of payments processed of 34,754. Of that, 34,526 payments were made within the 30-day period. So that takes us to 228 out of the 34,754 payments being late. And for that, there's various reasons. Amongst other, there was because of system errors, the data lines that kept on collapsing, that is a national focus area, national mandate. So the system itself failed us. So the majority of the payments fall within that category. Then if I take it to number of payments processed for a work day, 152 payments were processed on every workday. So we really try to to process the payments within the 30 days. And we communicate constantly with suppliers as to if there are failures, why it is, and what they can do to correct it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, HOD and Chair. So the two that you referred to was the one for the chemical ablution facilities. It's not the same one and it's not for a different period. The other one that you referred to was the appointment of a service provider for travel management services. That one had an amount linked to it. It also served at the QIC that can only approve limited bids up until R1 million. So the R1 million was reached before 30 September, and that's why it was the second one you will see was from the 1st of August. So it's not a duplicate.
Member Lecker, I'm going to give you an opportunity. I know you do a lot of payments and, you know, the 34,000 payments. What's the average that if you take all your payments, what's the average? Because I know other departments are smaller, but they boast about doing it over 4 or 5 days. That's the average payout. So give us an average. What is your average payout when it comes to paying your receipts? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. You must just remember that the nature of those departments are completely different. They certify goods and services. We certify infrastructure. When that invoice comes in, before we even know if it's payable, somebody must go out to the site, check what did they measure the previous month to what progress happened in this month, then certify the quality of the work. Is it to a standard that is acceptable? Only then does the invoice become payable. And then we start the process of payment. So it's very hard to tell you the average is this. It depends entirely on the nature of the project, and it also depends on the measurement of the work and whether it was certified as due and payable or not. But I can ask Shafida if she has an average, she can give it to you, but I won't recommend that, Chair, because it really depends on whether or by when our inspectors and our engineers are busy going out to certify the actual work. That's why I said we don't do fiscal dumping. We don't do prepayments. We pay on actual delivery and actual work done.
Good. Member Lecker, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. My apologies, Chairperson. I was disconnected for a few minutes. I have a question on page 216 on reconciling notes. I see there's been an irregular expenditure for the current year. 2023, 2024, it was 52, and 2024, 2025, it's 33. Can I get an explanation as to what does that entail or what it means? What was it all about? And maybe, I don't know if this question has been asked, but I will ask it either way. On the irregular expenditure that was condoned, what was this for? Why was the expenditure condoned? Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to give you HOD. Over HOD.
Ashir?
Thank you, HOD, and through your chair. The first question about 33,000 Rand, that was irregular expenditure actually incurred during the current year. In that particular instance, it related to a contract that had come to an end for which an advert was procured for this development around the corner in Loop Street, where the officials weren't aware that the advert or the contract had ended. So that was condoned. In the second instance, you asked about the irregular expenditure actually condoned, which is the 19 million. That related to former Department of Human Settlements for which contracts were expanded upon, and then payments happened in DOI, which we had to continue with. So why it gets condoned is because the actual value of the services, goods and services was actually received. And the only reason why it's basically irregular is because at the time the actual supply chain prescripts were non-complied with. Otherwise, the condonation is actually done by Provincial Treasury, which is of course independent from the department, who go through our submissions to ensure that value was received before condonation is given.
Thank you, Member Lekker. Is that a follow-up? Is that a legacy hand?
Legacy hand, Chair.
Okay, so that's all the questions on that. So we're going to jump right over to the financial information and annual financial statements. So we're doing until the end of the book. Is there any questions, members? Member Leon van Wyk, over to you.
Thanks, Chair. On 261, under 2.1 sales of goods and services other than capital assets. Got sales by market establishment, and then I assume that the subnote refers to an increase in the number of first home finance units and higher rentals recoveries. So I assume that has to do with the FLISP houses, and I suppose my comment that I have there is in running a FLISP scheme, you in fact now creating almost yourself as a bank or building society where you're selling off a property over a period of time. And I would imagine that's actually adding an additional amount of admin, and you've got a fair amount of capital that's actually tied up with it. Does one perhaps not get to a point where one actually sells off that property to somebody who can fund that those houses? Because otherwise you're going to sit with quite a large portfolio, or maybe I'm not getting the story altogether.
Member Lekker, Member Peters, you fine? Okay, I'm going to hand over to the Member
Yes.
Lekker.
No, I'm responding to say I'm okay, Chairperson.
Okay, thank you. HOD, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to ask the acting CFO to answer, and Brian can also come in with the FLISP units if he wants to add anything more.
Thank you, through you, Chair. These FLISP units are sold to individuals, and then individuals must ensure that they qualify at banks for home loans, etc. So we actually get the proceeds in immediately. The money is then housed in this allocation, or is classified like that. Thank you.
Follow up, Member van Wyk.
So I assume that's just an interim arrangement that you have here. Thanks. Okay, excellent.
Member Basil Peters.
I'm fine, Chairperson. Thank you.
He's fine. Members, is there any other questions? No questions? Member Mabomba?
This one is general. It doesn't necessarily on the in the first page you are being reminded of the ministerial priorities. And if you recall, during the APP of the last year, and and even in the APR annual report, ARP of the last year, also these were there. For example, they are there as listed. I do understand that this is for a term of the minister, because some legacies you only realize them after you already left. So those ones on the partnership, accelerating deliveries, on the first page of the report, using new materials and methods, securing private sector involvement, unlocking and securing new funding resources, and building the sector. At what extent now, Minister, have you managed to navigate in making sure these are accommodated. Again, others might only be finalized effective probably by year 5. But at what extent from your side, and then from for Advocate HOD, at what extent that you have managed to make sure that the money follows the priorities? Because it's no use of only to commit when there is no compliance in terms of the money follows that. Because we as a committee, we also want to help the minister, because I do know sometimes you will want to do this and then the department said, So you are here also to help. So at what extent these priorities that are there have been accommodated in this report? Thanks.
No, yeah, that's fine. Thank you. No, just a general question is, you have expenditure as percentage of the final budget. So if you look at your programs, you have transport and infrastructure 89, and then you have human. 239. So it's your appropriation per program. So you have 89% and 86% program 3 and 4. And then if you go further with economic classification, you'll see current payments 86%. There's 81% on goods and services. And then if you take a further breakdown on program 3, then you can see there's, and that's page 243, about maintenance 83%, 67% on goods and services there. So just that's why I said it's a general question. You know, there's explanation, but I don't want to go through all of them. But if you can just inform the committee, you know, you've only spent that percentage at that time. Thank you.
Chair, maybe if Shapira can just answer the last question first, and then we go into the explanation.
Thank you, Chair. So for this year under review, there's two big amounts that is shown as under expenditure. One relates to the disaster funding that was received during the adjustments budget, which we also explained earlier, but we basically just had to commit the funds related to the disaster management funding. And then for the human settlements program, that relates to the funding that was stopped in March. So even though the department had expenditure to process, we just couldn't do it because there wasn't budget available, because no appropriation was passed. Thank you.
You want to answer that one?
No, thank you very much, Chairperson, and through you to Member Mbombo. Thank you for a very good question, because many times ministers set priorities and sometimes it's actually just on paper, then it doesn't find itself into the department. But ultimately what I did, because again, I was lucky enough for second term to get the same department, so it made it quite easy to continue where I stopped in my previous term. So basically, each of my priorities are directly linked and embedded, has been embedded in the department itself, which is why the Western Cape Infrastructure Framework 2050, which is the long-term vision of the department, but built into the framework, actually is all 6 of my priorities. But we went beyond that, and earlier this year, the infrastructure strategy, which is the institutionalization of the vision and my priorities, and linking it to specific programs, is systematically being embedded in each of our branches, and how each branch will seek to actually take that and make it a reality towards the end of my term. But we went a step even further. Again, it speaks to the issue or my priority of accelerating delivery. It speaks about partnerships, and that is where the Infrastructure Implementation Plan 2050 actually is very crucial, because it speaks to the creation of the singular pipeline, which focuses on all the bankable and marketable infrastructure projects across the Western Cape. But not just that of the provincial government, which I'm responsible for through my portfolio, but knowing what is happening at local government level, knowing what national government is doing in our province. But we've gone beyond that, also now focusing on private sector infrastructure, investment, and projects within our own province. We will be chairperson through in the current year, actually in the next few weeks, when the provincial government will be hosting the Regional Leaders Summit. And after that, we will be hosting our first ever investment summit. The actual infrastructure singular pipeline will be made public. The virtual platform has been created, its first iteration. So basically it takes all of my priorities, which has been embedded into the administration, linked to various programs, but the actual singular pipeline, which speaks to partnerships, which is my first priority, which speaks to accelerated delivery, which will speak to finding new materials and methods to assist with our acceleration. But importantly, securing private sector involvement or the funding, which is ultimately what the investment summit will seek to accomplish with assistance of our sister department, but also securing new funding sources, which has been made possible earlier this year, again by our sister department, which is Minister Bartman and her team in terms of the ABF framework, which assists us in doing on-sheet and off-balance sheet transactions into the future. And the last but not least, building the sector, which obviously finds its way in all of this, which we've done. So if ever the portfolio would love, or you would love to know where this is embedded, just go to the framework, read the strategy, but ultimately the implementation plan, which is the singular pipeline, brings all of my priorities to life in real terms. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So if we talk about the funding, there's various ways for us to source funding. And maybe, Chair, when the committee has time, the department should brief you and take you through the plans because we do have them. But just by way of explanation, if you take because we do have an investment pipeline when we talk about leveraging the asset portfolio. 2 of those projects already went to market, of which you may be aware. The first one is Leeuloop, that has closed, and we are hoping to announce the successful bidder by end November, the beginning of December, because that will see us actually starting to build affordable housing right here where we are, like we have undertaken to do. The second one is Founders Garden. That one has gone to tender. And that one will close round about that period unless we receive, of course, a call for extension of time by the bidders, which we would then consider on the merits. That also brings in funding because what we are doing is we're making the land available and we're giving output specification of minimum housing units that we would like to see in lieu of the land that we give. There are other models where we are talking about meeting with the private sector and then through the provincial treasury securing funding. That has progressed, and that's why Minister is talking about the announcements of specific partnerships that we are ready to conclude. Likewise, when we talk about research and development, which you know is a very important aspect when it comes to alternative materials and alternative delivery models, we are hoping and we have secured partnerships which we are hoping to announce very shortly, not just with academic institutions, but also with key bodies such as ISA and others, which will be announced the content and so on very soon. Member Mbombo, that is just a couple of the things that we're doing. Of course, we can't divulge the kind of loans and others before it has gone through the loans committee, but we have been in talks together with the provincial treasury to secure that funding, and we firmly believe that we have found funders that are prepared to work with the Western Cape government in the delivery or in the acceleration of delivery as far as infrastructure is concerned. We have spent the better part of this year to do so. That has been the focus of the department, and all of our business plans, apart from the programs that we generally do, has been focused on how do we get investor-ready projects so that we are able to attract external funding, which is what we've done. And now it is for us to go through the process and actually showcase these for the private sector to then take up some of the opportunities. Thank you, Chair.
I think you can conclude also, and the HOD can conclude, and Member Van Wyk is going to do the thank yous on behalf of the committee. So in what you want to say, you can also conclude, Minister.
No, thank you very much, Chair. And you can see this is my conclusionary remarks as well to you. Chairperson, indeed, and the fact that the framework focuses on sectoral approaches, which is 5 sectors. It has made it very easy when we approach private sectors for possible private sector funding to understand how we package the singular pipeline. And again, once the system goes live in November, I would encourage the members to actually download the link and partake on that journey of the singular pipeline process. But it also focuses on our focus areas for the next 5 years. But remembering what the HOD said earlier on, infrastructure is a long-term game. It's not a 5-year or singular term. And I have said, even though I'm a minister for 5 years, I will initiate a process that will go way beyond my own term, realizing that a lot of the interventions which we are doing today that are very innovative, the true fruits of all of our labor here will be when I'm not even the minister in the near future, post 2029. And that is very important to note because we would love to take all the members along on this journey. We are used to talking about good governance. And as I told the AG when they visited me last week, we are now shifting gears towards innovative governance, which is a phenomenon which we will all learn as we go along. But it is a phenomenon that I have seen in action in my visit to Sao Paulo, where I've seen our sister state, which is also attending the Regional Leaders Summit. They have a population size of 42 million, but how they have taken innovation, a similar approach almost, and they have actually fine-tuned the system to such a level that some of the discussions we are having, I've practically seen in action in a country or a state which they do not talk a lot about it. But again, once I saw it in action, I could see where the next steps for me as the minister and the HOD as the accounting officer is heading towards. But Chair, in conclusion from my side, as much as I'm the minister and this is the HOD, we are a team. We meet regularly, we keep track, we've divided our strategy into quarters and to themes, and we package it as such so that should something not happen, she and I will know exactly with the team where we are. Because as we're institutionalizing more and more of our framework and the strategy, the theory or thought between the two of us is we all take ownership of where infrastructure is heading, and it's ultimately to reshape the Western Cape into the future. Richard?
Yeah, I also just want to conclude by expressing my thanks to this committee for your oversight, for the inputs that we do take to heart, for the suggestions that you do give us over time and how we have incorporated it, and just to show or just to maybe express that while it may not look like it, it is things that we really take into consideration when we do our planning, when we look at ways to get better, to improve, to work with efficiencies. But then also, Chair, I would be remiss if I do not thank the Minister for his leadership and his guidance. He stands by the department. He stands up for us. We make a plan, we agree about it, and we stick to it. But then for the team, Chair, because none of this is possible without this entire team, they are here, Chair, and earlier on we spoke about compensation of employees and bonuses or the non-payment of bonuses. We are not here for bonuses. We are here in service of the public. That's what each of us stands up doing every single day. And yes, while we cannot pay bonuses and while we struggle to recruit and retain professionals, the people that sits in this room are in it for the long game. They have been here. We are committed to the service of the Western Cape and all of its people, Chair, and we do rock up like that every single day. So I do want to say thank you very much to this team. I will be remiss if I do not thank the internal audit team, Chair, that's with us on this journey, and then especially our audit committee and our audit committee chair, and then also special thanks to the audit team that goes with us on this journey. Thanks, Chair.
Leon van Wyk.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, certainly, I think it's been a wonderful, almost breath of fresh air to see the annual report that we have seen. We've got a very complex department, I think, as both Minister and HOD have set out very, very clearly. And the way the annual report has been put together and the information that is within here, it makes it a lot easier for the standing committee to also interpret. And I think a testament to that is the fact that we got through this morning fairly smartly, I thought. and we got through this afternoon as well. And I think that is an indication as well, is that how well the document has been put together, how well it's been presented, and how well you've presented as well in dealing with the question. So I think from our point of view as a standing committee, I think we just want to wish you well in this current year. Thank you very much for this past year. And I think as well for the entire team. And with that, adding in, as you mentioned, the internal audit that you work with, audit committee, and through to the AG, because it is an entire team. And, very clearly we need infrastructure to take ourselves into the future. And so thanks very much.
Thank you very much. There is coffee and tea in the members' lounge. We're just going to take a 5-minute break to go down. I don't think there's any members of the public, so the meeting is adjourned. Members, we'll just come back after 5 minutes. Thank you.
Yes, please, no, please.
Too much money. A lot of people say, the same thing, too much. So, yeah.
Yeah, so.
But we will provide you. I just take a bit longer to respond because of this. That's the way I have to. We should pay for the justification. I respond something. I'll give you much. That's it. Thank you. It means some of us will have to be.
And take it from and do it on virtual, continue virtual. It will be a. Yeah, but I think some of the people are staying here in town. Maybe 1 or 2 maybe some us. So it goes in what weeks ago, I'm taking, I'm joining anyone from the admin. So it means that going this side, going to the XCC, will be closed. Not sure it's a long way. Go up to the region part and then go up. If you take this one by the municipalities, Cape Town, via the. Those ones will online, the departments will be here, so I'm here. You know, so those ones will online, that's what difficulty involved, we can do that, it's no problem. No, I'll be here if it starts the session. I'll be here because you know it's okay, let's do the resolutions. I usually the resolutions. I usually go because if you get there, then everything is gone. So we go eat with the people. But we'll give in and just get it over and done with. So the competent procedural officer, he jots everything down and he'll give it to us. We can just add if we need to. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. Honourable Chair, through your members, just a few things. 2 requests for information and 1 resolution of a briefing, Chair. The 2 requests for information, Chair, just conceptual, Chair. I will put it into proper wording, Chair. Where Prof. Mbombo asked about the female-owned contractors, and the department indicated that they can give us a list of that. Yes, and then the member Petrus asked about the SCM complaints in relation to corruption and fraud. The department said that they can supply us with that as well, a narrative report or a list, Chair. And then, Chair, on your query regarding the percentages of spent programs, the department indicated that they are more than happy to brief the committee on the funding plans per program, Chair. So if we can, how do you feel about that, Chair?
It's also I don't know the worrying factors, the infrastructure. You know the I don't know how they're going to do it, because sitting on education, if you look at maintenance of infrastructure, it's an enormous amount. They're never going to get to that, right? So I don't know. Maybe I was thinking the different fund, because we had some I think was it education that we had some certain funding models that they are exploring in order to close that gap. So I don't know how do you feel? Maybe we can get them into to give us a presentation on that, Member Van Wyk.
Yes, I think, first of all, we probably need to direct some of those questions on what it really goes about aging infrastructure and maintenance of infrastructure, as well as refurbishment is the one aspect of it, as apart from new infrastructure. So I think in each of the departments, the key departments being education, health, for instance, where there's a fair amount of infrastructure, those questions need to be asked. I suppose from a public accounts committee, as we're going through these documents, we are no doubt going to be noting the fact, as we saw here, 32 billion in terms of road infrastructure. And I think maybe we can ask those questions. How do we feasibly start dealing with that going into the future? And I guess at the end of the program that we have in dealing with annual reports, we will probably note each of these as we go along. And then, maybe there's some comprehensive report that we could then make or overall report that we have, that these are the issues that are being raised. and that we are going to need to have to find funding and how we're going to do it. I think I'm also a little bit comforted in terms of this investment symposium or conference that's going to be held, because it looks as if that is going to be focused on how do we get money into government as well, not only into private sector type of projects. So it is something we will deal with. From a budget committee point of view, we're also busy with a similar type of project, because we are saying we are recognizing the needs that there are, exactly as has been expressed here. And some ways we're going to need to find how do we fund that. And within the constraints that we have, there might well have to be priorities, or certain areas may have to reach greater priority than others going forward. But it certainly is there. Interestingly, I noticed that Dr. Duncan Peterson, who is the Director General of National Treasury, has also put out a statement, I think earlier this week or at the end of last week, in which he spoke about the level of national debt and how they are working towards trying to prevent the growth in national debt, because that is obviously affecting the amount of equitable share and grants that flow through to us. So I think all of this is tied in together, and I think we've just got to continue with our resolutions. That would be my feeling from a committee's point of view.
Maboma?
Can you remind me that we have the 10-year maintenance backlog plan that is costed and was also budgeted for as according to page 166? I cannot recall, because it says here that the information provided to the committee coordinate, it's 166. That is number one. Can you remind me if you have it 166, the last paragraph? 166, the last paragraph, because it says it was provided to the committee coordinate. I cannot recall, but if you do have, share in the 83.5. Can we see it, the department through the office of the HOD to share 10-year maintenance backlog? That has been. Do we have it? Okay, that is one. Thank you. Number two, if you get to 151, the risk management, they are saying that they do have this, the enterprise risk management policy and strategy. Part of it encompasses the whole issue of the maintenance. And for them, they do say that the decay of the infrastructure gives them sleepless nights. I can understand the Charlotte McClurg caught fire, the whole other infrastructure. There's no water because in Joburg because of the infrastructure. So now what they are saying, they say there is no money. But if you look in terms of their receipts, they've actually could be able to get more than 107 million extra, more than that they were targeting for in this financial year. So now there comes now the question in terms of education and health. Coming from health, I do know that there used to be some of the tensions in terms of who's to do what. Within the health, what we could be able to do, the major capital, we were relying on them because at the end, the building belongs to the public works. And then the maintenance part, which is if there's a broken window, there's a painting, or there's a smaller additional room that will be added, it will be done by health. But the rest, where you find that, especially where the beds, they end up staying in the ceilings and all of those are falling apart. It used to be, it's your fault. So at what extent now we could be able to make sure that within that enterprise, some of this service delivery department maintenance is also accommodated or I don't know whether, I do know that they have their own in terms of where they're supposed to maintain, and they've got different namings, whether it's a refurbishment or whatever. So at what extent can we get more information about this enterprise risk management? Plus also in terms of specifically linking to these. And then lastly, they did indicate they didn't want to share more, that they did ask for funding for the loans for some of these. So probably we may only know later on in terms of which one of those. But my worry is about maintenance. Lastly, Chair, earlier in the main committee, the whole issue of gravel roads and the unpaved roads, it's quite a big thing. We even have a resolution related to the gravel, because even within them, they did say that the risk of gravel roads, more so that now they'll have a service delivery model where the whole work that used to be done by this municipality is going to be done by them. And also, lastly, the impact of that, they have to reduce the thickness of the road, of the gravel. It's a concern because they use a different approach called mining, when they, unlike with the surface, when they do the roads. So it's themselves who say this is a risk.
I think we can incorporate all of that and get a briefing on that. I think that's very important. Member Lekker.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, as part of the resolutions from my side, I would want to request for a list of roads that have been repaired as a result of the disaster. So basically, areas where the funding allocated for disaster was used. So if we can get that. The second one, Chair, is on, I think this is page 228, under the uncertainty relating to future outcome of claims against the department. And I think this is with reference to note 17.1 on the financial statements, where the department is the defendant in various ongoing litigation and claims. So can we, in the near future, get a briefing on matters that have been finalized? Of course, this is going to be a closed session on matters that has been finalized and how those matters have been dealt with, because I would want to understand exactly what is it that the department has been tasked with in terms of the litigation that is ongoing. Then the last one, Chairperson, is mainly, I'm not sure, but I did make a request on this one earlier in the morning on the 7 matters of fraud that the department has opened. Can we get an update? Once again, this must be on a closed session, because that would have been under the matters on fraud. I'm making reference to a closed session, Chair, because we were informed earlier, I think by the audit committee, yes, the audit committee, that the forensic unit does brief them in closed doors. So
I'm a bit confused now. Member Lekker, did you ask that this morning or what? Because if you ask it this morning, then that will go to the standing committee. If you ask it in the standing committee.
I'm just making reference. Chairperson, I'm just making reference that in the morning I asked a question about the 7 cases that were investigated or that are being investigated as a result of fraud. So I am saying now, the audit committee has informed us when they started talking that they are being briefed by the forensic unit on these matters in closed doors. Hence, I'm saying I'm also requesting that we get a briefing also in closed doors, even if it means we must sign a non-disclosure agreement, but we must get information. I mean, if information gets to be shared, even if it has not been finalized to the audit committee, then what stops them from sharing such information with us?
Member
And
Lecker,
that
I'm
is
going
it,
to stop you there. We're going to do that. It's fine. We're going to do that. It's. I just thought you said you've asked it this morning. So you did not ask it. You asked for this committee to do it. We'll do that. Thank you.
Yeah.
But Petrus?
Thank you, Chair.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I agree with your recommendation now. We must discuss it. Chairperson, I want to go to page 12 of the briefing notes. And it is in relation with this cases of alleged corruption and irregularities and so on. That in every note at the end, the Auditor General asked us as SCOPA to play a more prominent role. And that's why I oversight role. And that's why I agree that we discuss that issues, but also in future that we have at least a description or a briefing note of what the cases entails, Chairperson. We have to guess what it is. It's only there's 10 cases or 10 irregularities, and we don't know what it is. There's no note, nothing else. So I think, and it's not only for the infrastructure department, it must be we must ask that for all departments that they at least brief us or give a description of what it is.
Thank you, member. So we we concur with that. I'm just saying that so they're going to send us now a list of all those cases, but in future we're going to ask them to give it, make it part of the annual report. That is what you're saying. Thank you.
Yes, Chairperson. Thank you so much.
Okay, that's the end of our meeting. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you.